Hi there. So we have this epidemic in our society where millions of people have symptoms of low thyroid, hypothyroidism, low energy, brain fog, can't lose weight no matter how little they eat, no matter how much they exercise, feeling cold all the time, hair falling out, constipation. These are some of the cardinal signs of not having enough thyroid hormone. The person goes to the doctor and the doctor says, sure sounds like low thyroid, let's do a blood test, right? So doctor runs a blood test, and this is where it splits into two groups. The one group, doctor's going to come back, and this is about half the time, the doctor will say, nope, your thyroid hormones look good, your blood work looks good. And the person's like, well, then why don't I feel good? They're frustrated, they're not getting answers, right? And then you have the other side, again, about 50%, where, yeah, it does come back where the thyroid hormones are showing low in the blood. Seems like a simple solution. The doctor puts the person on thyroid hormones. Maybe it's synthroid, levothyroxine. After a period of time, they go back to the doctor reruns the blood work. This time, most of the time, it comes back now as being good, but the person's like, but I still don't feel good. Well, then the question has to be asked, and hopefully I'll answer it for you here. How can that be? How can you have millions of people that are exhibiting really obvious signs of not having enough thyroid hormones, but their blood work looks good? Well, to answer this, we've got to go down to the cell level of the body. Our cells are our building blocks. They're our foundation. We're made of cells. They're the smallest living part of every one of us. All function comes from our cells. So if there's anything wrong, we've got to go back to that cell level. It's traceable back to that cell level. There's something wrong at that cell level. This is a hormone problem, and actually is a low thyroid hormone problem, but it's different than what people think. It's different generally even than what the doctors understand. But let's go down to that cell level and I'll explain what I mean. So I'll draw you a cell, and I think it's better if I explain this first by showing you the way things should be. And we're going to use thyroid hormone here as an example. And ordinarily on that cell we have what are called receptors. These are antenna looking things where the thyroid hormone or any hormone attaches, and then whenever it attaches it can send its signal in, and then it does its magic. It'll help you lose weight, it'll give you energy, things like that, right? So the thyroid hormone has to attach and then it sends its signal in. That's the way it should work. And it could, by the way, it doesn't have to be just thyroid. It can be insulin, that's a hormone. It could be estrogen, it could be testosterone, a hormone called leptin, which is our master fat burning hormone. These are all hormones that need to attach and then they send their signal in. And again, that's how the hormones are able to do what they're supposed to do. But what happens if, and by the way, let me back up. This is the blood right here, right? So the doctor can check here. He can check the hormones in the blood, and they can be in the blood. But what happens if they can't get their message into the cell? Well, that's the problem, because the doctor can check for this, but he can't check to see whether those hormones are actually getting into the cells. It's called hormone resistance if they're not able to get inside the cell normally or adequately. And what happens with that is that this membrane of the cell becomes damaged, and just like if we would fall and crack our elbow on cement, what's the response to the damage in our elbow? It's to become inflamed, right? Well, the same thing happens here at the cell level. When our cells become damaged, they become inflamed. The things that can damage our cells, just a quick understanding here, it can be a bad diet, it can be too many toxins, it can be too much stress. There are other things. But just as an understanding that the things that we do in our lives, particularly as Americans, they tend to drive this cell damage and inflammation. And when a cell is inflamed for too long, when it's damaged for too long, now the receptors can become blunted, and they can actually even become obliterated. And now there's nowhere for the hormones to attach. It looks good in the blood, but the hormones are there. But if they're not getting into the cell, it's almost the same as not having them. And this, again, this is an epidemic problem. It's called hormone resistance, and it can be with thyroid, insulin, it can be with any of the hormones. Thyroid hormone, if you can't get it in, you're going to have low energy, right? You're going to have inability to lose weight, brain fog, constipation. It's your metabolic hormone, one of your major metabolic hormones. It drives metabolism. Insulin is going to cause, whenever you can't get insulin in, it's called insulin resistance. Pre-diabetics are insulin resistant. Diabetics are insulin resistant. When insulin can't get in, sugar goes up. So depending on what hormone you're talking about, that will alter, obviously, the effect in the body. But I think this is an easy thing to understand here now, and this is why so many people have the hormones that are in their blood, but they can't get it into the cell. One other thing that can happen with thyroid, by the way, I didn't go into this, but that hormone, thyroid, actually the most abundant is T4, thyroid hormone T4. T4, though, is not the active hormone that does the magic in the cell. It's called more of a storage hormone. T4, which is the most abundant by far, like 93%, it has to convert to what's called T3. T3 is what gets in our cell and does all of the magic. That conversion primarily takes place in the liver. If the person is toxic and your liver is your major detoxifying organ, now you might have a situation where the person's not going to be able to convert T4 to T3. The doctors check this hormone very often when they're checking for thyroid problems. That can be, quote, normal in the blood. You can have adequate levels of T4, but if it's not converting to T3, there's a problem, right? Because that's the one that has to get into the cell. So there's another example that can show you how a blood test for thyroid hormones can show up good, but the person doesn't feel good. If this was hopeful, and I hope that it was, you want to know more about how this situation happens and what can be done to reverse it, then click the link below. I know you'll be glad that you did. God bless.